Hello, and welcome to Full Tech Ahead. I'm your host, Amanda Rosani, and I'm excited to be here today with Anders Lillevik. He is the CEO of Focal Point. How are you doing?
I'm well, Amanda. Pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me on your show.
Happy to have you on the show. So share a little bit about Focal Point. What services do y'all provide?
So we're a B2B SaaS company in the procurement sector. So we help enterprises streamline and strengthen their procurement processes. So before I started Focal Point, I was in procurement for 25 years, and I led procurement organizations, big and small, but probably some that you've heard about, like Fannie Mae, QBE, Webster Bank, and Citizens Bank. And I found this to be a problem throughout the industry. I would have spent millions of dollars in procurement technology, but my team and I did most of our work in Excel and email. So that's what I'm setting out to fix.
All right. So then let's talk about you offer a tool that's sort of like a supply chain X-ray of sorts. Can you describe this a little bit?
Sure. It's kind of like the procurement central nervous system, I call it. So procurement has a lot of tools out there that do disparate things in disparate ways. And we bring all the data and all the processes together so that organizations can look in one place, hence the name of the company, quite honestly, where they can look at everything related to a supplier in one spot and everything related to a category of spend in one spot. And you look at the many different dimensions of things, right? And you make sure that you get all the information, everything there at once, but also that you can model that procurement does, whether it's onboarding a supplier, doing financial due diligence on a supplier, or going through an RFP process or renegotiation, that all these processes can be mapped out so the right things are getting done by the right people at the right times. And procurement has been, the evolution has been, fairly rapid. But I started in procurement in the 1990s. It was all of us saving money. Now we almost have to also save the world and save the company and all these other things as you start looking at diversity, inclusion, carbon footprint reduction, anti-modern slavery, and I can go on and on and on. And, at the end of the day, to think about carbon footprint, the suppliers typically make up 70% of an enterprise's carbon footprint. So it's not enough that you manage your own, but you also have to manage the supply chain of it as well.
So can you share some real world use cases that can provide a better picture to our audience?
Certainly. So I think, as you are now looking at anything in procurement, whether that's, buying management consulting services or buying office supplies, right? Those are all categories of spend. And it's very important that you know who's spending it internally, what are they spending it on, who are they spending it with, what are they paying, and all those kinds of things. And that's called an internal assessment. You look internally and say, okay, what are we doing? What's the current picture right now? And that typically takes a very, very long time to do if you do it manually in disparate systems all over the place, right? Then once you're done doing your internal assessment, you need to look externally to say, all right, who are the we're doing business, I'm calling it Office Max or Accenture, whatever, right? Who are the other players in the industry? How are they fighting with each other in terms of to get my business? So you figure out what the relative positioning is of the supplier out there. So that's called a Porter analysis for those of you who have got your MBA. So you can do a Porter analysis. You can do a project matrix to figure out the risk and criticality of the category. And all of a sudden you come up with the external analysis to tell you, right, if you go to market, here's the best way to go to market. So you take those two, mirror them together, and you come up with a strategy based on what your priorities are. So for example, in management consulting, it could be that, let's say you spend $200 million here in management consulting and you have 200 suppliers in there. You probably want to get rid of some of those tail suppliers and concentrate where you have critical mass. It could be that you want to reduce pricing. It could be that you want to increase innovation. All those things go into the category strategy. And essentially procurement needs to execute those strategies in three ways. Procurement does three things, essentially. They select new suppliers. They manage the suppliers they have, and they transact with those suppliers. And whatever category strategy you come up with needs to be executed in those three ways. And as the information cycles through, and as you start doing your procurement project, your performance management project, and so on, you can track how you're doing against your goals as and when it happens, which is pretty cool, right? So no longer need to jumping between systems to figure out, okay, where am I at? And I wanted to push payment dates from 30 days out to 60 days. How am I doing on average on that strategy? And that's, again, what I wanted to do when I was a chief procurement officer, is just have that kind of visibility at my fingertips.
And I imagine, does this solve some of the issues when it comes to bottlenecks between different departments, now they're all brought together and communicating.
Correct. So again, we talk about a central nervous system, right? So let's say that legal has a legal matter management system that they want to manage. We can API push into that legal matter management system, and they can manage the work there. And when it's done, it comes back. Or same thing with a supplier risk management. If they have Archer or something like that, we can push the work in there and it gets done. But the beautiful thing then is for the end user, the users of procurement services can see where things are sitting in the process, who has the ball, how long has it been sitting there, and when is the ETA of coming out the other side. And this has been a critical point for procurement, that they know, stakeholders don't really know what's going on within the black box of procurement, and procurement has to be responsible for processes that they don't own. They're the custodians of the overall process, but the pieces and parts of it aren't necessarily in their remit. So opening up the lid from that, for example, and giving users the ability to use Teams, for example, and you can at legal, where are we at with this? And it shows up in the channel and everything becomes on system. So yeah, it's pretty cool and pretty eye-opening when we show this to customers.
Do these sort of technology solutions make a visible impact as far as like meeting any regulation requirements or anything like that?
Well, certainly. So again, like different geographies have different requirements, right? And when you have a very, very flexible workflow or, processing solution, for example, DORA became the new process in the United Kingdom and Europe, where they have this called Digital Organizational Resiliency Act. And all of a sudden, procurement had to do a few more things differently than what they did before. And rather than having to, pay Accenture or another tier one consulting company to build a custom strategy for them, a company like ours, for example, can say, okay, now what do you need to do? Okay, you need to make sure that the financial stability state, you got to make sure that their SOC 2 includes these 5 things. And it's relatively easy to just pivot and create those things rather than having to sort of go through a Herculean development process to meet those requirements. And the other cool thing about a solution like Focal Point is that it can be contextually driven. So it can apply the rules of Asia to Asian users or Asian suppliers, and vice versa here in the United States or Canada, right? And again, becomes a pretty powerful thing when you can actually manage things globally, but execute them locally.
So when it comes to implementing this technology, what's the first step? And from your experience, where do companies hit a roadblock? Usually there's always some kind of challenge along the way.
It used to be integrations. A long time ago when integrations were like a big thing. Now with APIs and fairly open architecture, I think APIs have made that more or less go away. The biggest challenge we have is the fact that the legacy is managed in Excel and email. So the processes aren't really documented all that well. And it usually sits on somebody's desktop. So when we get in and we could put a workflow solution in place that mandates a certain amount, certain process, organizations have challenges sort of extracting that from their brain and into a workflow solution. And the other thing is there's a lot of sort of religious discussions or, fiefdom discussions internally. Okay, should I do it this way or should I do it that way? Because now, again, you're mandating how things get done potentially. And that requires a lot of discussions. If people haven't done their homework before they start, we can sometimes hit a roadblock there where we have to guide them through the process. And the other thing that we see is now that, let's say audit is sort of driving the charge of putting in a new process, right? Audit tends to overcorrect. God bless them, right? We love auditors. But they try to boil the ocean. So they want to go from the wild, wild west to communist China overnight, which is typically a nightmare for change management, right? So for us, we sort of say, okay, you want to get all the way over here, but let's do it in bite-sized chunks so that you can bring the organization with you rather than sort of overwhelm them with change.
Are there any companies you can actually point out that are using this technology and any sort of journey stories that you can share?
Yeah. So one of our awesome customers, VSP, the eyewear insurance company, and they were one of our early adopters of the solution. And the beautiful thing is they took this solution and they adopted it. When we went live, we had two guys that basically were their power users. And as we were going live, they came up with more and more use cases. We can use it for this. We can use it for that. And alongside us going live, they were developing their own processes that they wanted to use after we went live so that they could further utilize the tool. And by having a fixed platform fee licensing model rather than a usage model, that allows our users to basically get as much utility out of the solution as they can, rather than us coming with our hand out about it. And having been a procurement person before, that was very important to me, because I always hated it when I really started using a solution and the supplier would come with their hand out and say, well, now you have two more users. And, it was kind of annoying for me. So seeing them going in and saying, all right, we're using a solution to solve this problem and that problem, something that I never even thought about. This is really, really cool. And it helps us be more innovative as well. We have another few customers right now who are really pushing the boundaries of Gen AI, and we're helping them build agents to do a variety of things. Because we have all this data, because we touch every process, it makes it easier to plug agents in and execute distinct tasks or tasks that follow other Gen AI tasks. And we can make it smart, which is also really, really cool. So
yeah, we hear so much about AI agents these days. And so you can make special boutique AI agents for each company.
absolutely. So they can bring their own and we can plug it into our infrastructure, or they can write their own in their own infrastructure, as long as we can hit them with an API. But we spend a lot of time helping them writing prompts, number one, to be efficient and effective, but also so that it's useful when it comes back, right? Because we can write into our backend. So let's say I was having some fun with it literally just before this call. I was helping a customer, basically saying, all right, put in an email address, extract the URL, figure out all the information about the company. Then, if they're public, run their financial stability assessment on these different things, and then post it into the system, right? Pretty cool. These are things that would take hours to do, 6 months ago. And now with a click of a button, it can be done automatically. And it's pretty awesome, I think.
Fantastic. Well, is there anything else that you would like to share that I haven't given you an opportunity to speak about?
Well, I think in this particular industry, what I'm seeing a lot of now is fear about displacement of people. And I think that's probably not a fear I would have, right? I think solutions like this, and Gen AI in particular, help people be more efficient and effective in the job that they do, so that they can move on to the more value-added things. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to do. Like, we're trying to automate the tactical and accelerate the strategic. And I think that's really what we're all about now. So we built the infrastructure to sort of connect everything. Now let's automate everything that we can to make everything more efficient and effective. And I think that's kind of where we're going next. And I think that's pretty cool.
There were any final insights you could leave with our audience today, what would that be?
Well, if you don't have a procurement department, you should consider getting one, because you can save a lot of money, right? It's typically the second expense only to HR expenses. And it's amazing the amount of capital that you can free up by simply looking at the top 10 providers in your company and negotiating that contract. Even as a startup, we deploy that strategy quite a bit. So you may not need focal point, but you should probably need procurement.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights today.
Thank you.
And thank you to our audience. Stay tuned. There's more podcasts like this coming up.